We have come a long way from the time Dobbin trotted down the country road. Our methods of living, our methods of doing things have changed. The history of agriculture, from the ox team, coal oil lamp, red flannel days, to our present mechanized farming, is a fascinating story. Why not compare yesterday with today? Plowing, good old days when a day's work was measured not by what a man could do, but by what he could stand. Now, tell that modern plowman to let go of the steering wheel and grip the plow handles and hear what he'd say. The old-time middle-busting of Dixie maybe was fair enough to the mules. The man did 51% of the work. Try this tractor middle-buster of today, because human nature wanted to climb out of the furrow from behind a mule and ride. In those early days, a farmer developed his bunions, pushed on the lines, and harrowed 6 acres a day. Would you call him lazy now? Cushion seat, with that little tractor harrowing 50 acres a day. What? Pioneer planting small grain. It took rhinoceros hide on the ankles to stand the wrinkles in those leather boots. And grandfather's corn planting. Imagine him today rolling over a standard half-mile cornfield. Bull of the Woods one-row cotton planting beat granddad's hoe, but that's all it did beat. The nation's garden has grown from the little home truck patches of 60 years ago to acres of vegetables for city tables. Where are the folks today who could or would do all this work without improved machines? Today's power vegetable planter. He might crawl along dropping seeds by hand, but he believes in self-preservation. He knows his onions. Present-day corn planter, comfort, speed, 2 things human nature demands. The old one-mule, one-ox cotton planters are being replaced by tractor planters, like mud roads and mule teams, replaced by concrete and automobiles. Today, the farmer fills the grain drill hopper with seed, rides like a manager, and plants in comfort. By the time Granddad chopped 2 acres, the weeds where he started needed chopping again. Modern cultivation doesn't ache the arms like the old hoe. He'll let the hoe rust on the peg. And here's he-hawing cotton cultivation the old way, 2 or 3 or more times to a row. But today, this method of cultivating is better, on time, done with profit. What else do we want? From the time man came out of the cave or down from the tree and began to stir the soil, weeds have grown to plague him. He fought them with hand hoes, with wheel hoes, and now with these motor tools, he licks the weeds to a standstill. It took a strong back and stomach upholstered with pork and potatoes to wade across a field with the old scythe. That's the way their great-granddads raked the hay. That must have been the way Adam raked it. Do we want to go back? Old-timers told of art in pitching hay, but believe us, it took wrestlers' shoulders and sole-leather hands. Here's an old-timer working between meals, and he needed victuals, too, 3 times a day for that hand-pitching job. You know anybody who thinks this Farmall mower is too easy and too fast? Well, we might find him a scythe. Raking hay with a modern side delivery, 50 times faster, 50 times easier, 50 times cheaper, and a better job. Now the loader rolls it onto the rack. The man at the receiving end isn't exactly on vacation, but he's not heaving it up from the ground by Armstrong like the old-timers did. Modern hoister in a 100-acre hay harvest. How long would it take that old-timer with the hand fork to push that crop into the mow? Here's the last word, and a neat performance, too. That pickup baler taking the crop right from the windrow cuts out some of the middlemen in processing hay and straw. By starting early and working late, a pioneer with his hand fork could dig potatoes almost as fast as the relatives could eat them. This up-to-date method roots them out perfectly and without damage. Plenty for French fries, mashed, or the coats on. In early days, each family with 2 or 3 cows milked by hand was a different story from today's job of milking millions of cows. No machine has done more to relieve farm women and children from drudgery than the mechanical milker. For proof, consult farm women and children. Old-fashioned way skimming cream from milk. How many housewives would it take to skim for the ice cream and soda trade today? Her fingers are clean, all right, but wouldn't a farm family rather have cream from this modern cream separator? And confidentially, she'll soon have a motor attachment on that separator because already most of her neighbors just turned the switch. Ask a present-day farmer how he'd like to ride home from town 40 miles an hour and start grain harvesting this way. They dropped those sickles like they were hot when cradles were invented. Even with the cradle, no farmer was happy with that back-bending grind of harvest. Happy day when a farmer invented the old self-rake that cut and laid the grain in bunches for hand binding. The farmer didn't want to stoop to bind bundles, so a farmer's invention elevated the grain to a binding platform. But the farmer didn't want to even bind bundles by hand, so another farmer invented the binder, tying bundles with wire. The wire binder was improved by twine binding. Then came larger fields, more grain, calling for power, speed, answered by the tractor binder of today, working with accuracy and a mighty saving of human energy. And who wants to or should waste it? Days of George Washington, grain was flailed from the straw by main strength and a bit of skill. No farmer did that because he liked it. Grim necessity mothered invention of the thresher that swallows the bundles and delivers clean grain to the truck. And now comes the combine, threshing grain right in the field. Once over and it's all over. The last word in streamlined grain harvesting is the combine. And the last letter in that last word are these little babies made because farmers demanded such machines. The combine threshes wheat, oats, rye, barley, buckwheat, flax, beans, any grains or grasses that produce seed. And in addition, no man strains his suspenders operating the combine. When 16 hours were a standard day and no place but bed to go in the evening, ox team slow motion paid the taxes. But today's farmer puts more hustle into load moving. If he didn't, he knows the world would move on and leave him right where it left him. Now, the modern motor truck moves farm freight at a rate that would have stopped old Dobbin's heart before they got him hitched to a wagon. A man needed high horsepower rating to wrestle corn by the old method. He didn't complain much because a tired man can't think much. But he did think, I'll find an easier way. And he did. A farmer invented this corn binder because he refused to wear his heart out the hardest way. It's man labor enough now just throwing the corn bundles downhill into the ensilage cutter that chops and blows them into the silo. The whole modern field ensilage harvester chopping silage right in the field. No human hands touch that silage. From truck to blower, the silage is surely being hooped into the silo. Old-timer husking corn from the shop. He handled the crop so many times he almost wore it out. Then in the prairie fields, corn was husked by hand in mud and cold. To a man in a big field, it was a long time from October to Christmas. Today, frost on the pumpkin. The farmer dons his mittens and heavy underwear and rides with the modern corn picker. Here's the original corn sheller, which may have been all right for producing old Johnny cake or homemade hominy. And this one-man sheller was okay for a bushel now and then. But for shelling the whole crop, and a big crop at that, off the cobs before Wednesday noon, this is the present-day method. Thus we see agriculture has come a long way. Today, farming is a business, an industry, a profession, all wrapped into a good way of living. What brought this change in farm methods? Not the soil, which is much the same as yesterday. Not the seasons nor the clouds, which come and go as always. Not the muscle of man or people. What brought this change in farming? The power of motors, drawing better machines, doing the work easier, quicker, on time, better, and with more profit.
Bountiful agriculture is taken for granted by most Americans. It's pleasant to think in terms of permanent and profitable farming, of fields and fields of cotton, corn, grain, tobacco. It's nice to dream of plentiful harvests from ever-productive lands, year after year, generation after generation. Unfortunately, this is not the whole truth. Profitable farming is not always permanent. It is not inherited from generation to generation. Today in America, there are too many examples of unprofitable farming. Too many farmers scraping a miserable existence from soil-depleted fields. Profitable operations cease and farming becomes a hard way to make a poor living when soil fertility is lost. When the land has been worn out, it cannot produce profitable crops. Millions of acres of American farmland have been laid waste and abandoned because of poor farming and erosion. The land stands idle and the house is empty. Financial ruin has followed misuse of the land. Once beautiful homes, supported by fertile land, in too short a time have become only ugly reminders. Surrounded by decadent agriculture, merchants failed and towns have been deserted. Nature's inevitable laws are punishing people with poverty, the certain penalty for continually taking more from the soil than is returned to it. Substandard living cannot be averted when the land is neglected. Who is to blame? No single group or generation. This agricultural decline started long ago. Originally, nature endowed this vast country with great expanses of fertile soil. The soil was rich in organic matter, minerals and plant foods, and safely protected against the elements. Roots of trees, shrubs, and grasses bound the soil together. The winds could howl and the rains beat down, but the soil remained secure, and the water drained gradually into clear streams. But this perfect combination created by Mother Nature had to be disturbed. Our forefathers needed food, so they cleared the land and tilled the soil. In a comparatively short time in terms of world history, we became a leading nation of the world. Our growth was phenomenal. This rapid expansion drew heavily upon our natural resources, and the soil was no exception. More and more land was brought into cultivation because more food was needed for an ever-increasing population. But growing food was not the sole reason for overexpanded land use. Cash cropping, growing crops for cash returns, for expanding markets, was the greatest cause of land misuse and soil depletion. Certain sections favored certain cash crops. Grain here, corn there, tobacco here, and cotton there. When there was virgin soil, the plants thrived and cash cropping was profitable. But year after year in the same fields, cotton was followed by cotton. Corn was followed by corn, and tobacco was followed by tobacco. This continual and repeated one cropping generation after generation wore out the soil. Fertility was drained, organic matter used up, and crop yields declined. The worn-out soil lost its ability to hold water, so the water ran. The little trickles between the rows grew to rills. The rills grew to rivulets. The rivulets grew to torrents. As the water ran faster, more and more topsoil was carried away with it. The more topsoil that was washed away, the lower became the crop yields. To get more good soil, to produce better crops, timberlines were pushed back. But when the slopes were bared and tilled, the water ran still faster and topsoil washed away quicker. When crop yields became too low, farmers moved. They moved to Mississippi and Texas, to Kentucky, Indiana, and Iowa, then to Colorado and to California. Plowing and grazing with no regard for the land, they moved on until there were no new places to go. In the wake of this reckless exploitation of the land is conclusive evidence of the destructive results. Exposed land left to the ravages of wind and rain, land that never again can be used for agriculture. Deeply eroded gullies in once productive fields. The gullied land is lost forever for cultivation, and the remainder of the field is more difficult to farm. Other fields are scarred by smaller finger gullies and worn by sheet erosion. Fields where most or all of the topsoil has washed away. In our rush for expansion, once fertile land has been robbed of much of its valuable topsoil. We think of agriculture as something very permanent. But in another century, if soil depletion and erosion continue at the present rate, the great farmlands of our country may become inadequate to support our population. In this progressive country of ours, anyone can rightfully ask, why has such a thing been allowed to happen? Why isn't something being done about it? Fortunately, something is being done. For more than a decade, the Soil Conservation Service, a branch of the United States Department of Agriculture, has been fostering soil conservation and corrective land use measures. It is a government service whose creed may be said to be, put every acre to its best use. Treat every acre according to its needs. That is a far-reaching objective, and its real significance is obviously the sound basis for a permanent agriculture. The Soil Conservation Service is nationally organized. Its 7 regions cover all types of farming in the country. Tracing the operations of one of the regions will show how the service acts in the best interests of the individual farmer. The southeastern region includes 9 states. It is an area old in agriculture and consequently subjected to greater soil depletion and erosion. Regional headquarters are at Spartanburg, South Carolina, where a staff of expert soilsmen, agronomists, engineers, foresters, and biologists apply their specialized knowledge to the agricultural characteristics of that region. Their fact-finding information is spread throughout the area. Each state in the region has a staff of soil conservation technicians. In South Carolina, as in most states of the country, a special law permits farmers to organize local soil conservation districts, which usually include from 1 to several counties. The districts are established by the farmers themselves on a voluntary basis. Interest in soil conservation may be aroused in a number of ways. Usually, the county agricultural extension agent shows a group of interested farmers the benefits being derived on farms in a nearby established soil conservation district. He explains the procedure necessary to form a district of their own. The signatures of 25 or more farmers are sufficient to submit a petition to the state. The state sets a date of referendum so that all the farmers in the area may vote for or against the establishment of the district. If a majority want a conservation program, the district is established and a state charter is granted. Then a group of 5 men is selected as a district governing body. They develop a cooperative conservation program designed to solve the problems of their district and continually interest farmers in that program. They obtain necessary operating assistance from the Agricultural Extension Service, the Soil Conservation Service, and other federal, state, and local agencies. As farmers' requests for conservation farm plans are made known through their district governing board, a soils expert is sent to survey and plot the characteristics of each farmer's land. This includes survey of slopes, types of soil, extent and severity of erosion, depth and quality of topsoil, and present land use. He plots the cultivated fields, the woodland, the idle land, the pastures, and the land devoted to the farm home site. The important factors are charted on an aerial map of the farm. These pertinent facts are necessary if every acre is to be put to its best use and treated according to its needs. The information on these maps becomes the basis for recommendations to be made by a farm planning technician who works out the new farm plans. Meeting with a small group of farmers whose farms adjoin, he learns their individual needs and desires. Although no two farmers' problems are ever identical, and no two farms have the same land characteristics, the rain that falls on one farm may flow onto and erode fields of a neighboring farm. So the efforts of individual farmers should fit into a program extensive enough to solve their entire conservation problems. The farm planning technician must thoroughly understand the overall problem as well as the individual problems of each farm. He must plan the corrective measures that will remedy the situation. Then, he advises and aids as the plans are executed. With the information obtained at the meeting and having the survey map to go by, the planning technician and each farmer together plan for better land use and for soil and water conservation. Together, they record the facts and figures on how the farm was operated in the past and the farmer's desires for the future. How many acres to corn, how many to cotton, how much hay and how much grain, how many cattle and how many hogs. Then, with these facts, they go over the farm field by field and design a plan that will meet the needs of the land and the circumstances of the farmer. All the factors of the farm are carefully considered, and water disposal is first. Natural drainage ways are selected that will properly drain the adjacent tilled fields and retard runoff water. Field layouts are planned to effectively tie in with the drainage plan. Patterns of the fields may be changed to take advantage of contour or around the hill farming. Contour cultivation is needed on all slopes put in crops. Soil improvement calls for more clover, legumes, and grasses, and a definite plan of crop rotation. The farmer's cash income must be maintained, and more diversified farming is usually recommended. Some idle land may be more productive than fields that are in crops, so a shift will improve production. Something must also be done with gullied fields. Pasture relocation and improvement are very important, and the woodland, that part of the farm too often completely neglected, can be a good source of income. The new farm plan, made field by field, is designed to put every acre to its best use and aims toward better farm income by improved soil and more diversified farming. The plan agreed upon is left with the farmer and is his guide for the future. The farmer is pleased. In fact, thousands of farmers who once worked rectangular fields are changing the landscape from the old rectangles to the modern lines of contour farming. These contour lines are pleasing to the eye, and the returns are pleasing to the farmers. They are making more money, stabilizing the soil, and making their future more secure. Already, thousands of farmers are following the soil conservation program on millions of acres. This soil conservation program is being widely accepted because it is fundamentally sound. These are some of the practices. There are many others, such as irrigation and drainage. And usually a combination of several is needed to solve the problems on any farm. To show the application of these practices in all sections of the country in one film would be impossible. And yet, although the pictures of this film were made in the Piedmont area of the Southeast, many of the practices shown will apply to all areas. Water disposal and utilization is the foundation of every farmer's soil conservation plan. Water that falls on a field can either run wild and cause damage, or if controlled, it can be more completely utilized. To control it is to prevent rapid runoff. To utilize it is to give the soil a chance to absorb it. Where drainage ways are broad, the water spreads and can be more easily retarded and absorbed. On broad meadow strips, close-growing crops such as clover and grass mixtures, lespedeza or kudzu, can handle a large volume of water from the clean-tilled fields. The close-growing crops not only retard water runoff, but prevent soil loss, and the meadow strip becomes a productive part of the farm. Because of the abundant water supply, the meadow strip produces better hay than the area that was previously used for hay production. When water from the meadow strip is discharged into a pasture, the sod prevents erosion, and the additional water increases growth of the pasture grass. Runoff water can be further utilized by draining into a farm pond. A pond provides valuable water storage for the livestock, and when stocked with fish, furnishes food and recreation for the family. Overflow from the pond can also be used to advantage. Where water from the meadow strip drains into a woodland, the roots, fallen twigs, and leaves absorb most of it. Some filters harmlessly into the woodland stream, and the stream runs clear. A good drainage system slows down water runoff and uses the water in every possible way. Methods of tilling the soil become the next important consideration. 4 related practices, terracing, contour farming, strip cropping, and crop rotation, are so interwoven that they are best considered together. Vertical farming made the small canals that disastrously washed topsoil from the hills into the valleys, and eventually into streams and rivers. Moisture was lost for that season's crop. Fertile soil was lost for all future crops. Horizontal or contour farming provides field control that either holds the water or discharges it gradually. Moisture is saved for that season's crop. Good soil is saved for all future crops. To retard water runoff and hold the moisture, terraces are an advantage on the steeper tilled slopes. Terraces and contour cultivation give rain a chance to soak in where it falls. The grade of the terraces allows any excess water to flow off gradually, and the terrace outlets pass it on to the meadow strip. If the terrace outlet discharges water into a road ditch, the outlet should be protected with a dense vegetative cover to prevent erosion. Many terraces are built with heavy terracing outfits, but thousands of farmers are using their regular farm equipment to build and maintain good terraces. Before building terraces, an accurate survey is most essential. Only competent men should lay out terrace lines, as improper grade will cause severe damage. Since ordinary farm machinery has proved so efficient in both construction and maintenance, terracing and contour farming are completely practical. Moldboard plows may be used efficiently. Likewise, disc plows. Harrow plows are also good tools for construction and maintenance. Proper farming and adequate maintenance are just as important as the original terrace construction. Farming over terraces, up and down the slope, will destroy terraces within 5 years. To farm terraced fields successfully, the contour of the terraces should be followed. Around the hill or contour farming is much easier. More acres can be cultivated at less fuel cost. Established grade lines and terrace ridges are held, and the horizontal furrows of the plows, planters, and cultivators hold the water. Crop yields are increased because moisture is held in the soil. The soil can be made more absorbent by adding organic matter. Manure from livestock provides organic matter and fertilizer, but manure alone may not be sufficient. So strip cropping and crop rotation are combined with terracing and contour farming for best results. Alternate bands of clean-tilled crops and close-growing crops follow the terraces and contour of the slope. The bands of close-growing crops vary in width according to the requirements of the farm. The clean-tilled crops and close-growing crops are changed systematically according to an established plan of rotation to build soil fertility. On slopes with less incline, where terraces are not needed, contour strip cropping combined with contour tillage may be an adequate means of water control. When water flows from the clean-tilled strips, it is apt to flow rapidly and be muddy. But the many obstructions of the dense, close-growing crops slow down the water. Much of the water soaks in, and soil particles are deposited. Surplus water trickles from the cover strip and is clear. In strip cropping, there may be a tendency to make clean-tilled cash crops predominate. Care must be taken to make the erosion control strips wide enough to control the volume of runoff water. Proper layout of strip crops makes possible efficient cultivation. Strip crops can often be arranged so that many rows are even longer than those of the old rectangular fields. It is possible to have approximately the same area of tilled crops, small grains, hay and grass by the strip crop method. Only the arrangement of these crops in the fields is changed. Where strips of grain are alternated with grass, it is easier to open the grain fields. There is no wasteful back swath. The strips of close-growing crops may also produce a valuable harvest. For example, lespedeza, alfalfa, and grasses all provide good ground cover, and the seed brings a good cash return. Strip cropping is being widely adopted because of its many advantages and can be started at practically no expense. On short, gentle slopes, contour farming with a good crop rotation will usually solve the problem of soil and water conservation. Cultivation on the contour, from the deep furrows of the plow to the small grooves of the harrow, tend to hold the rain where it falls. The rows of cultivated crops and shovel marks of the cultivators serve as checks during the growing season. Even distribution of moisture eliminates wet spots and allows cultivation sooner after rains. More moisture is held for use by the crop during the growing season. Contour planting and cultivation of orchards holds the water evenly for trees at the top of the slope as well as at the bottom. A cover crop, as green manure, serves a triple purpose. The cover crop holds moisture, prevents erosion, and adds organic matter to the soil. Contour farming has proved so successful that in some sections more than 90% of the land is farmed on the contour. Even gardens are planted and cultivated on the contour. With all kinds of farming, from flat fields to terraced slopes, systematic crop rotation is the most vital part of a soil building program. Close-growing cover crops that hold the water and prevent erosion are ideal for soil building in the crop rotation plan. Legumes, as green manure, add both nitrogen and organic matter, which, when the plant has decayed, are available to the next crop. Another good practice is to seed lespedeza, clover, or other legumes with small grain. The cover crop holds the soil in place and prevents erosion after the grain is harvested. When matured, the accumulated plant material makes an abundant mulch that holds water and adds organic matter to the soil when plowed under. Rotating soil-building crops of kudzu, cowpeas, winter peas, alfalfa, lespedeza, clover, or grasses with clean-tilled crops replenishes soil fertility. Enterprising farmers who carefully plan systematic crop rotation get results. Returning organic matter to the soil makes it more absorbent and more productive. Terracing, strip cropping, and contour farming hold the water and drain it off gradually through the close-growing cover crops of the water disposal system. If these practices had been followed in the past, it would now be unnecessary to give attention to gully control. Fields where water was uncontrolled and ran wild became damaged and gullied beyond practical use. If the damage is not too severe, kudzu or other appropriate cover crops may be used to stop the erosion and prevent further gullying. In time, these scars may heal. If the ground is not too rough, the area can be used for supplemental grazing. Farm roads have been a source of water damage because they were ordinarily laid out with little thought of how they would accelerate erosion. Many farm roads were relocated and the old road abandoned, but left unprotected, resulting in a tremendous gully, all caused by wash from the old road. With each heavy rain, more and more of the farm is being lost as the gully eats into the cultivated fields. To stop erosion, a protective cover on the abandoned road is the first essential, and then the gully should be planted to trees, shrubs, and vines. Water runoff from highways has damaged field after field. But highway grades are being planted to kudzu and grasses to prevent erosion. And highway departments are requesting farmers to sod terrace outlets where they drain into roadside ditches. Trees provide the most stable protection for hilltops and the steepest slopes. The ground litter absorbs rainfall and helps the roots hold the soil. Critical slopes, difficult to cultivate in tilled crops without causing erosion, should be retired to permanent cover. When planted to close-growing crops, they are an area for hay, hold the soil in place, and provide supplemental pasture for livestock. Pastures and grazing are a vital part of any well-rounded farm improvement program. Grazing year after year continually removes plant food from the soil, as surely as though crops had been harvested. Pasture soil eventually becomes depleted and needs rebuilding. It may need lime or commercial fertilizer to restore productivity. If weeds are a pest, they can be easily killed by mowing at the proper time. Temporary pastures may be used during peak periods, dry spells, or while the permanent pasture is being improved. Some old pasture areas may be reseeded to a different grass or clover that produces abundantly, such as white clover. Additional pasture acreage may be gained by merely relocating a fence to follow the contour and sodding the slope. A poor field is changed to a good pasture and becomes more productive by supporting more livestock. Whether by improvement of existing pastures or by relocation of other tracts, adequate pasture provides the foundation for larger dairy and beef herds, more diversified farming, and increased income. The often neglected farm woodland can also be a source of income in this program that puts every acre to its best use. A woodland that has had little care, where all sizes and many kinds of trees grow without any plan of development, can be changed to a systematic tract that will bring profit. Trees that are properly spaced, are of the right species and can develop, are marked. The other trees are cleared out. The wood may be used on the farm or sold as pulpwood, boxwood, firewood, or posts. With proper maintenance and care, trees that have room will grow correctly and more rapidly. The well-managed woodland fulfills the farmer's needs. Good straight logs from an established woodland bring a good price when sold for lumber. The good woodland is also a constant source of fuel and posts for the farm, and any surplus can be sold. Soil conservation plans are so complete, they even include a border strip along the woods, where field crops seldom grow well anyway. The close-growing plants of the border strip make a haven for birds and small animals, encouraging wildlife and bringing recreation for the family. Game birds, fur-bearing animals, and insect-eating birds usually find enough food, but what they lack to increase in number is cover that is well distributed. Serratia lespedeza, or heavy grasses, offer ample cover for even the larger birds. Insect-eating birds help protect the crops in adjacent fields. Vegetative cover of the farm's water disposal system and field borders adds to the protection for wildlife, as do the banks of streams. And a farm pond, which may be a wildlife refuge and a source of fish for the family meals. From 200 to 300 pounds of fish each year can be obtained from an acre of well-managed farm pond. Besides, there's the fun of catching them. And speaking of fun, the whole family will enjoy the farm pond. The soil conservation program is basic and sound. Its practices are designed to help farmers stabilize the soil, the nation's most valuable natural resource. To those who are kind to the soil, the earth returns its bounties. Plentiful harvests mean greater security and a brighter future. Permanent agriculture with a steady, diversified income. Permanent agriculture with the satisfaction of a job well done. Permanent agriculture with a definite future for this generation and all our future generations, with correspondingly thriving industry, progressive towns and cities, and all the finer things of life, supported by a soil conservation program that produces permanent agriculture.
To meet the ever-increasing need for a smaller, all-purpose tractor than had ever been available, Harvester gathered first-hand information from farmers themselves. Vegetable growers said they wanted a small, all-purpose tractor with special tools for planting and cultivating. The part-time farmer told us he wanted power that would be economical, fast, and do a good job. The poultryman and the small livestock raiser wanted light power to raise crops, grind feed, and do the odd jobs. Operators of medium-sized and large farms wanted a small tractor for lighter jobs, to release heavier tractors for regular work. In whole sections of the country, those who tilled small acreage had definite need for adequate economical power. Power that must do a better job of farming if the soil were to produce a better living. And throughout the nation, on the small, family-sized farm, there was an urgent demand for a small, all-purpose tractor, a tractor that the small farmer could afford to buy and operate. The engineers were given the difficult problem of satisfying these widely varying demands, of designing a small tractor with scores of uses in all types of soil, in all sections of the country. This tractor must be low cost, economical to operate, easy to operate, and all-purpose. It must have matched implements, quick change implements, special equipment. It must do every job on the small farm. With carefully engineered design and with extensive tests by farmers and growers, the final product emerged. The Farmall Cub with selective matched equipment that makes it tailor-made for every job. There are moldboard plows and disc plows, a universal mounting frame for all forward-mounted implements, planters for cotton, corn, beans, and vegetables, cultivators for row crops with special multiple row equipment for beans and vegetables, a power mower, and many other tools. The sturdy Cub engine incorporates time-tested features of the famous Farmall family. It develops 9 1/4 horsepower on the belt and 8 on the drawbar. And the most advanced feature, touch control, is optional. Whenever the engine is running, its positive hydraulic action raises or lowers tools or holds them at any desired level. Many thousands of these tractors are now in use throughout the nation. Let's look about the country and see this versatile tractor at work. The moldboard plow mounted on the drawbar is one of several tools for soil preparation. There's also a two-way moldboard plow for turning soil uphill on contour plowing. The disc plow that is widely used in many sections of the country. The harrow plow for lighter soil preparation and for covering a larger acreage. The middle buster, a favorite tool on southern farms. Rear-mounted implements are raised and lowered by touch control through the rear rock shaft. Building beds with a disc bedder so the crop will be higher and safer from damage by excessive moisture. For preparing seed beds in most soils, the tandem disc harrow is just the right implement. This fertile black soil is well adapted to vegetables and flowers. A single section disc harrow, working soil with old tree roots and rocks. A peg tooth harrow, the most universal implement. It can cover 30 acres or more per day. In planting equipment, the runner type one-row planter with correct hoppers plants cotton, corn, and practically all row crops. Also, there is a shovel type blackland planter. Fertilizing equipment can be used with either. For universal use in vegetables, there are multiple row planters. Here, forward-mounted equipment is planting 4 rows with 12-inch spacings. Planters can be adjusted for 2 22 or 24-inch rows, 3 16 or 18-inch rows, or 4 12-inch rows. Touch control raises and lowers the equipment with little effort. Rear-mounted vegetable planters are also available. They are readily adjusted for desired spacings. The turning radius of 8 1/2 feet makes the cub highly maneuverable and well adapted to this type of work. Here, he's traveling at 3 miles per hour. There is also a lower gear of 2 miles per hour. 6 miles per hour in the road gear. This might be any farmer quickly changing from one operation to another at any time of day. One forward section of the single row cultivator. There's no lifting and straining. It's not necessary even to remove the nut from the bolt. The drawbar is removed by loosening 2 bolts on each side. A rear section of the cultivator is just as easily placed and tightened. The entire rear section is quickly assembled. Width of the front and rear wheels is adjustable from 40 to 56 inches with the adjustable front axle. He's cultivating Easter lilies, so must be careful of every plant. Shields hold soil away from the lilies and shovels must not disturb the bulbs. In contrast, this corn needs plenty of soil around the base. Also, all the space between the rows is worked, and wheel tracks are cleaned out by the rear sweeps. Cultivating tobacco, where the 20 and 3/8 inch clearance of the front axle is very important. Maneuverability of the tractor makes it profitable to cultivate small areas. Fertilizing equipment is available for the one-row planter. Here it's being used with the cultivator as a combination operation on garden peas. The 2-row beet and bean cultivator. It may be operated on beds or in flat fields. Behind the rear wheels, sweeps or special shovels are adapted to the operation. The large commercial vegetable growers and the part-time farmers like the efficiency of the multiple row cultivator. The tractor's variable speed governor permits travel of any desired speed with perfect control. Although suspended from one bar, each cultivator is full floating and operates independently. The equipment is adjustable to match rows of the multiple row planter. Notice how thoroughly the soil is worked with the knife weeder blades in this 2-row operation. While a larger tractor is doing its regular work, The cub on this farm is doing the complete job of making hay. The 4 1/2 foot mower is a simple, low-cost machine driven by a V-belt from the power takeoff. This versatile tractor can rake as much as 35 acres of hay per day. And throughout this entire operation, it is leaving the big tractor free to do the big job for which it was intended. This man, who has an orchard as a hobby, uses his maneuverable cub and mower for close work about the trees. In the citrus groves, it's just right for mowing under the edges of the trees. Cutting this marsh grass certainly tells its own story. Professional men or businessmen who have homes with spacious lawns enjoy the fresh air and sunshine as they do their own mowing. Here is a practical, economical method of keeping the city parkways beautiful. Hauling feed is an auxiliary job for the tractor on a ranch with Brahma cattle. Maintaining and improving the fertility of the soil is a vital operation on any farm. With a belt pulley, the tractor furnishes power for grinding feed, sawing wood, and other belt jobs. Well-cut cotton stalks will disintegrate and return their organic matter to the soil. There's power to do every job that's required of a small tractor. And on any farm, no power job is too small to be efficiently performed by the cub. Its simplicity and ease of operation make it useful for every member of the family. But let's see how the cub meets the requirements of the users. It is low cost, economical to operate, not more than 3/4 of a gallon of fuel per hour. Easy to operate, and all-purpose. It has matched implements, quick change implements, special equipment. Does every job on the small farm and the smaller jobs on the large farm. Each user selects whatever tools will do his job the best. So the cub is tailor-made for every job.
The success of present-day agriculture has resulted from the improvement of livestock, the continuous development of better methods of handling crops, and building and conserving the fertility of our soil. Much of the progress has been made possible by new developments in harvesting machinery. Machines that do the work better or reduce the number of men needed to harvest the crop. Now, farming is made easier and more profitable with one man harvesting. Good harvests start with good soil. And if we're to continue to have plentiful harvests, we must return organic matter and fertilizer to that soil. The new fluid manure spreader
provides a more effective way of applying manure, that soil-building byproduct of livestock. What is meant by fluid manure? Strange as it may seem, 1,600 pounds of every ton of manure is liquid, and this part, which is generally lost, contains half of all the nitrogen in the manure and 80% of all the potash. So to get the full benefit from manure, the liquid too should be spread on the field. The tightly sealed bed of this spreader holds everything but the smell. When the spreader is not in use, a sump hole can be opened to drain off water from rain or snow. Flared side panels reduce the labor of loading and add to the capacity of the bed. The reinforced bottom is strong enough for loading from a litter carrier of any height. The fluid manure can be spread handily every day, or when necessary, the tight bed will hold all the valuable soil-building fluid until the spreader is full. The fluid manure should be taken directly to the field before vital elements deteriorate. This spreader is a well-balanced machine that relieves weight on the drawbar, permitting safe operation at tractor speeds. It's easy to handle in the yard, on the road, or in the field. A close inspection shows there is no dropping or dripping from the bed. In the field, the manure is finely shredded by the beaters and the high-speed action of the widespread spiral. The beater teeth are U-shaped, tapered, and staggered so there are no open spaces. Distribution is accurate and even. With this machine, you can spread manure as thin as you like, because 5 apron speeds give you a wide choice of the amounts per acre. In a program of balanced farming, the farm herd produces cash income and is also a vital source of fertilizer for maintaining the productivity of the soil. There are many new developments in machines to harvest feed crops. Providing nutritious ensilage for the livestock is an easy one-man operation with the new ensilage harvester. There's no wrestling with heavy, dirty bundles, for the ensilage is made in the field as the crop feeds into the machine. From the time the standing crop is cut to the time it's blown into the silo, it never touches the ground. Mud, water, or destructive bacteria cannot mix with the ensilage. The finely cut, thoroughly mixed ensilage, leaves, stalks, and ears, preserves all the plant food. A deflector, controlled from the tractor seat, places the ensilage anywhere in the wagon. One man harvesting means the crop can be cut exactly at its best without waiting on anyone. The ensilage packs tightly. Why? Because it's automatically, completely, and thoroughly shredded and mixed as the ensilage is made in the field. That means a solid pack. A solid pack that's free from air pockets that would produce mold. A solid pack that means more tons in each silo. When feeding the ensilage, the farmer knows that in his silo is an extra large quantity of the most nutritious, succulent feed he has ever had. When winter comes, or pastures dry up, he knows that his feeding problem is whipped. Because here it is, ensilage that's high in food value. Ensilage that the cattle eat completely. Ensilage that puts weight on the beef cattle or increases milk production of the dairy herd. Talking about the dairy herd, maybe your cows don't like the coarse stems of alfalfa hay. Maybe they leave them in the feed trough. We'll fix that. We'll chop those stems and mix them with leaves in the new field hay chopper. Then the cows will eat the mixture completely. This is one of the new methods of making hay. Easy, isn't it? The hay is picked up, chopped, and elevated into the wagon. It's lifted gently upward while the pickup scoots beneath it. All the leaves are taken in. every bit of the food value is harvested, with the leaves and chopped stems thoroughly mixed. An ideal feed that combines nutrition and roughage. The chopped hay occupies less space in the box and in the barn. Here, the chopped dry hay is blown into the barn through the pipe that runs between the silos. A variation of this machine is a field chopper, which cuts and chops green hay for grass silage. When it comes to baling hay, you can pack up your troubles with this new automatic twine baler. Gone are the baling crews, for now one man does the whole job. The baler is completely automatic. Two knotters tie the bales securely as the machine travels steadily along. One man can make as many as 5 bales per minute. That's baling hay. The crop can be cut when it's at its best stage, and quick handling in the field will hold the color and the leaves. Operating the machine is as simple as driving down the windrow. There are no belts, chains, or conveyors on the feeder to cause trouble. There is no winding or wrapping of hay or shattering of leaves. The pickup gently lifts the hay like a carpet and slips beneath it. The motion is so slight that all the leaves stay on, and once in the feeder, there's no getting away then. The open-end auger and packer fingers feed any kind of hay or straw positively. Making hay this way is like playing games compared to the hard work of former years. Everyone likes the uniform, rectangular sliced bales. Uniform bales are easier to transport and stack. Sliced bales are easier to feed. And here's the real test. The cows really go for that hay with its protein, minerals, and other food elements. Talk about leaves. That's what the cows would do if they could talk. Leaves on the stems mean no leavings in the trough. When it comes to picking up straw behind a combine, the baler can also handle a tremendous volume. Here is an ideal method for the farmer to save straw for his own use or to sell the surplus commercially. Say, what's that machine back there? Why, it's a one-man, self-propelled combine. Isn't that a real way to harvest wheat? That's almost as easy as going fishing. With this self-propelled job, you can go anywhere. You can open a field any place, cut the grain in any direction, and there'll be no run-down grain, no wasteful backswat. You can cut right up to the fence all the way around the field without flattening or shattering the crop. If a field has weed patches, spots of green grain, or wet places, you can cut around them. The ripe grain is saved, and the spots can be cut later. On the road, the outfit handles almost as easily as a car. The platform extends over the ditch on the right, giving wide clearance for meeting and passing. Using the road's speed, it's easy to move from one location to another. The self-propelled combine, with one-man operation, is like having an extra hand and an extra tractor at the busiest season. A tractor and driver are released for plowing, cultivating, or other seasonal work. To propel the combine, and for cutting and threshing under all conditions, the heavy-duty 6-cylinder engine provides steady, full power with plenty of reserve. The operator sits in an easy, natural position. He can watch all the cutting and feeding mechanism, and he has full view of the grain as he approaches it. The hydraulic lift platform gives him easy fingertip control of the cutting height. The improved grain bin is large for ample capacity, is well located to allow clearance for trucks, and has a sloping bottom for quick and complete emptying. pickup attachment for the self-propelled combine works well with grain cut by a windrow harvester, a binder, or a mower. Slow motion shows that even though rain has beaten the windrow into the stubble, the attachment picks it up completely. Clods or stones are passed over or flipped away. In soybeans, the self-propelled combine does a swell job. A wide range of cylinder speeds and adjustments make it possible to thresh soybeans or edible beans efficiently, without cracking the beans. Where soybeans are grown, corn harvest and soybean harvest usually come along at the same time. A self-propelled combine releases the tractor for corn picking, and both crops can be harvested simultaneously, avoiding many cold, disagreeable days in the field. Here's that same combine again. Well, almost the same anyway. This is a special converted model for the rice fields. Cutting beside the ditches, rolling along in the squashy mud or the soggy fields, crossing levees squarely or rocking over them, the self-propelled combine is the modern answer to the rice grower's harvesting problem. Large, high-lug tires carry the machine effectively in mud and over the levees, while the wide axle and rear wheels produce a rocking action that raises the thresher only slightly when crossing levees. A wide range of cylinder speeds and adjustments means good, clean threshing. Whether in grain, small seeds, or beans, the self-propelled machine threshes efficiently. Over all kinds of soil and ground conditions, the self-propelled harvester thresher rolls along. Here in the South, rice is a big cereal crop. But in the South, cotton is still king. Cotton, the last major crop to defy machine harvesting. For centuries, there was no improvement, no real progress in the method of harvesting cotton. It was slowly and laboriously picked by hand. The volume of cotton picked was limited by the ability of human hands, the skill of human fingers. Fingers where even the best gather cotton slowly. Cotton growers, agricultural engineers, and equipment designers have actively studied this problem for years, hoping to develop a machine that would relieve human labor of the burden of this back-breaking work. Today, that machine is a reality. With amazing speed, the McCormick Deering one-row high-drum cotton picker rapidly performs the job that would be slow, tedious work for approximately 50 people. Now, the last of the great crops of the world can be successfully and economically harvested by machine. Steel fingers inside a mechanical drum remove the cotton from the open bowls and eliminate the toil and expense of hand picking. Parallel vertical drums pass on both sides of the cotton. These rotating drums are timed with the forward speed of the machine, so that the revolving spindles enter and withdraw from the plants without any raking action. And yet the tiny barbs on the spindles get the open cotton. Inside the drums, the cotton is removed from the spindles and conveyed to a separating chamber, where considerable trash is removed. It's blown past a grating that further assists in removing trash, and then into the basket. The basket holds approximately 1/2 bale of seed cotton, allowing the machine to operate with few interruptions. A hydraulic lift makes dumping as easy as moving a small lever. The basket swings high over the trailer box and is completely self-cleaning. The high drum pickers are mounted on Farmall tractors with perfect clearance for row crops. They have 2 speeds to meet varying crop conditions. Every planter expects the picker to get a high percentage of the open cotton. He wants a machine that is maneuverable, handles easily, and saves time on the turns. He must have a machine that does not damage the unopened bolls, for they represent additional crop to be harvested later. In plants with heavy foliage, the cotton picker also works efficiently. The leaves and the unopened bolls are not injured, and the cotton is cleanly removed. As soon as the cotton is ready, these marvelous machines can make quick work of harvesting. If desirable, they can be operated at night to get the cotton out of the field. The cotton is picked at its best stage before it's discolored, dirty, or strung out. These successful cotton pickers complete the mechanization of raising cotton. Now the crop can be mechanically planted, chopped, cultivated, and harvested. The cotton pickers are capable of meeting the widely varying climatic and crop conditions and the special requirements of different types of cotton. Back-breaking human toil is eliminated. Cotton can be harvested with speed and in large volume, and production costs are lowered. Cotton, that has reigned for centuries as the king of fibers, will still be hailed King Cotton. These are the latest in one-man harvesting machines. Machines that are your servants in making farming easier, in handling the crops by improved methods, in eliminating man-hours of work. National Harvester brings you one man harvesting.
Looks peaceful here in the country, doesn't it? And it seems a long way from the guns of the battlefront. But these broad fields are at war, and the farmers here, as in every other part of the country, are very much in the fight. From fields like these, they are producing the food we need to win the war, more food than they ever produced before. To get this added production, more farmers each year are turning to a new kind of agriculture called soil conservation farming, which saves soil and water, seed and fertilizer. The result has been a 20% increase in yield per acre, as an average, on thousands of conservation farms from coast to coast. 20% is a real jump, and worthwhile anytime, but especially nowadays. Here in York County, Chris Musser farms 102 acres. At harvest time one year, he began thinking about soil conservation. By harvest time the next year, he had made the change, and despite a drought, was harvesting a bumper crop for a nation at war. This is the story of that year, from harvest to harvest. Spring Run Farm is a family farm, and it's been that way from the beginning. Chris Musser is head of the family, thinking carefully, working hard. But then everybody works at Spring Run. Mrs. Musser has her jobs too. And so does Chris Jr. and Gordon, Paul, Alvin, and the twins, Mary and Martha. Yes, everybody has always worked at Spring Run, and out of the land, the men and women have made a good living for themselves and their children. A good living and a big, comfortable home, now nearly a century old, and other solid buildings rooted firmly in the good earth. In the fields, there's time for a lot of thinking, and that's what Chris Musser was doing at harvest time that year, shortly after the war began. Crops were pretty good, all right, but not good enough for wartime, and the soil was getting thin in spots. He knew that some of his neighbors had taken to plowing across their sloping land, along the contour, to save soil and water, and their crops had turned out better, too. But as a boy, Chris had learned to plow a straight row, straight as an arrow. It's hard to break an old habit like this, even when you know that straight rows waste your land and hurt it. With every hard rain, the water pours downhill, down the rows, and washes soil along with it. Sooner or later, that means trouble. Off and on during the winter, Chris kept thinking about his land, whether he should change over to soil conservation methods, whether it would really help him get more production. So when he would take the vegetables and eggs and butter to town, he got into the habit of asking friends and neighbors about conservation. Like any good farmer, Chris wanted to find out all he could about the new methods before he tried them out. In the evenings, Chris worked long hours at his desk. There were records to keep, plans to make for the year ahead. He read reports on conservation farming, too, how it was done, and how it increased production. For production is the big farm job always. All the rest of the winter, as he worked in the woods, Chris was thinking of his snow-covered land, picturing his fields with the new rows on the contour and the strip cropping. And he was counting, too, on the better production he would get through soil conservation. There's always something fresh and clean about spring, every time it comes around. The sun is warm and friendly. It feels good. The very air seems to be charged with a new life, and the zest for living and growing is everywhere. There are 1,000 jobs to do in the spring, too. And on the farm, it seems as though all of them have to be done at the same time. There's machinery that has to be made ready, and there are potatoes that need to be cut for planting. By the middle of April, the ground was ready to work. Melvin Blish, the Soil Conservation Service technician, was on hand with a conservation map of the farm, a map which he and Chris had worked out earlier, which showed the kind of soil, the slope and erosion, and the conservation needs of every field. Chris had taken the first 2 steps in soil conservation. He had learned the facts about his land, and he had decided to put each acre into the kind of crop it was best suited to produce, whether that be grass or grain, row crops or trees. Marking off contour lines came next. and that required a level. A small pocket model would do. Some farmers use a carpenter's level. It doesn't have to be shiny or expensive. To prove it, Chris had made a very good level out of wood and 2 screw eyes. The horizontal bar was nailed at right angles to the longer hanging bar, and the whole device swung freely on a round wooden pin made from a broomstick handle. Simple, isn't it? The whole business of contouring is simple. All you need is a good eye, a level, a few dozen stakes, and somebody to help place them. Here's how Chris did it. Beginning at the side of the field, the first stake was driven into the ground. Then Gordon, with a few more stakes, paced off about 30 feet across the field at right angles to the downward slope. Holding one of the stakes, he faced back toward his father. And Chris, sighting along the top of his homemade level, waved him first to the right and then back a bit, until he could see the peak of Gordon's cap in a direct line through the 2 screw eyes. That was the spot for the second marker. Then, with Chris moving over to the second stake and Gordon pacing off another 30 feet across the field, they began the same process all over again. It didn't take long. Within an hour, the stakes marking the first contour row were in the ground. Furrows running along this line would be level all the way across the field. Level rows act as little dams, each one slowing the downhill movement of soil and water. And that's the object of contouring, to keep water from pouring downhill every time it rains. By slowing the water, you prevent the soil, seed, and fertilizer from washing away. And when you do that, your crops are bound to be better. It isn't necessary to place stakes for every contour row. On gently rolling land like this, you only need to sight, stake out the contour about once in each 100 feet of slope. And once the contour line is marked out, you can plow a furrow or 2 along the stakes as a guide and then pull them out for the next line. Plowing or any other operation along the contour isn't hard at all. Most farmers find it saves time, saves fuel, because there's less gear shifting. Operations are easier on the contour. Laying out the contour rows didn't interfere with spring planting at all. As soon as the weather was right, Chris was ready to go ahead with potato planting, liming, and all the other springtime jobs. And then, almost before he knew it, spring was turning into summer, and the garden was flourishing. For the first time in years, Chris was taking a crop from land that had lost little or no soil, seed, or fertilizer in the spring rains. There had been no replanting to do either, and that had meant savings in time, labor, and money. Where the soil had been wearing thin under straight rows of corn, thick-growing barley across the slope now held the soil in place. The contour rows of potatoes and soybeans were coming along very nicely. And on the steepest land, too steep to cultivate, hay had taken the place of row crops. There's no more erosion here. In the cornfield, contour rows were holding back water so it could be stored in the soil for the young crop. Peaches, 500 bushels of them. Where's the cream, Mrs. Musser? Nobody goes hungry on the farm, especially when there's a good garden. Even after most of the fruits and vegetables have gone to market, there's plenty for canning. Looks good, but I'll bet it tastes even better. In wartime, we need more milk and butter. Chris was producing more of both. And 1,500 more broilers. More soybeans, too. With water stored in the soil by conservation, corn production went up. Even though rainfall was less than half of normal, Chris got more corn from 28 acres this year than he did from 33 acres last year. The potato fields told the same story. Precious water stored in the soil brought the crop through in fine shape, well above the county average. Well, that's the story. Chris Musser and Spring Run Farm happen to be in Pennsylvania, but almost the same story could be told about farmers and the land in Georgia or Minnesota, Oregon or Utah, Arkansas or Nebraska. All over the country, soil conservation is increasing production, increasing it now when we need it most. And soil conservation is protecting our land against erosion, conserving it for our own use and our children's use for years to come.
For the truck garden. As auxiliary power on the large farm. As a complete power unit on the small family-sized farm, where it will perform every job that necessity demands. International Harvester presents the Farmall Cup. The Farmall Cub is the smallest mug of the famous Farmall family, and only International Harvester builds the Farmall. Though small in size, it is extremely versatile and delivers plenty of power at the drawbar to turn a deep furrow. Forward-mounted implements are handled with ease, even though there are many tools of different designs. Implements operated by power takeoff make the Farmall Cub more than a match for the horses or mules it will replace. Belt power for the feed grinder or other belt-driven equipment makes the Cub a complete unit for final crop processing. It's also the ideal auxiliary tractor to scamper about the large farm and do the odd jobs. Now let's go to the fields for actual and detailed operations. The soil is turned in symmetrical furrows as the 12-inch bottom on the floating beam plows at a uniform depth. Two types of moldboard plows are available as parts of balanced and matched implements. A left-hand plow may be matched with this right-hand plow for alternate operation to turn all furrows in one direction. It is especially adaptable for contour plowing and turning the soil uphill. The tractor will plow 3 1/2 acres per day in average soil. The Farmall Cub's high-compression, precision-built 4-cylinder engine delivers 8 horsepower on the drawbar. This ventilated engine has positive pressure lubrication, an efficient cooling system, and is economical on fuel. It filters the oil and filters the air. A master control lever raises and lowers the plow and other rear and front mounted implements. A counterbalancing spring, which neutralizes the weight of the implement, makes operation easy and quick. The furrow is always the proper width, and the desired depth is regulated by the right-hand adjustment lever, which raises or lowers the hitch point. This low-price tractor, with the easy-to-adjust and easy-to-operate plowing units, provides the correct plow for any region or any soil. If the moldboard plow is not the one, the disc plow or the harrow plow will do the job. Any of the plows is quickly attached or detached. In stubborn soil, the disc plow is especially effective. The 26-inch heat-treated disc cuts a 10-inch furrow. Rugged construction plus wheel weights ensure that the disc will be held to its work under the toughest soil conditions. A harrow plow with two 24-inch discs that take a 15-inch cut is designed for shallow work and to cover more acreage. Three well-built tillage implements to be used in good seedbed preparation are the 4-foot tandem disc harrow, the 6-foot single-cut disc harrow, and the spring-tooth field cultivator with 7 spring teeth. The 4-foot tandem disc harrow is controlled from the tractor seat. This highly maneuverable equipment is easy to use on regular fields or small patches. Quality work makes possible the preparation of fine, deep seed beds for even the small seeds of the truck gardener. There are 3 models of one-row planters with variations to handle every crop from small seeds to cotton and corn in the respective sections of the country. They are all direct connected and forward mounted on the universal mounting frame. You'll like the way they are quickly mounted or removed and easily adjusted. Removal and replacement does not disturb adjustments. This planter and fertilizer is performing numerous operations at one time. It's opening a furrow, depositing fertilizer, planting the seed, covering the seed, loosening the ground behind the rear wheels, and during this process, working the entire seed bed. Besides the one-row planters, there is a multiple-row forward-mounted planter for vegetables. The Farmall Cub has 3 forward speeds, 2 miles per hour, 3 miles per hour, and 6 1/8 miles per hour. A variable speed governor makes possible any desired constant speed. A complete line of cultivating units will please every farmer, for they cultivate every type of crop, from the large field crops such as cotton and corn to the smallest vegetables, for which there is a multiple row cultivator to match the vegetable planter. In all planting and cultivating operations, the location of the driver's seat gives him full vision of the entire operation. The wheels may be adjusted for narrow or wide roads. The front wheels can be reversed on their hubs for 40 or 46 inches. The rear wheels can be adjusted from 40 to 56 inches in 4-inch spacings. An adjustable tread front axle is available to match all rear wheel treads.
On every farm, whether large or small, there is hay or weeds to cut. This simple, quick-change mower is driven by a V-belt from the power takeoff. The driver has an unobstructed view of the cutter bar and everything that comes within the 4 1/2 foot swath. When making hay, the Farmall Cub is useful in numerous operations. The Farmall Cub is truly an all-purpose tractor, has power for belt-driven machines, such as small corn shellers, wheat grinders, and hammer mills. It enables the farmer to do the final crop processing on his farm. On the large farm, it does the odd jobs quickly and easily. The Farmall Cub and the implements that go with it offer the operator of the small family-size farm the first opportunity to mechanize at a price he can afford. On the truck farm, as auxiliary power on the large farm, as the complete power unit on the small family-size farm, the Farmall Cub is the low-cost, complete work unit you will welcome on your farm. Your local dealer will give you complete details.